In this video, we will walk through the steps one might take to create a typical SQL query. SQL queries form the basic building blocks for other objects, including data grids, pivot tables, charts, reports, and dashboards. We'll begin by locating the data source that has the data we are interested in. In this video, we will be looking at sales transactions from the fictitious company Northwind Traders, provided by Microsoft. Click the data source in the Explorer tree, and then select the New Data Grid menu item. This will invoke the Visual Query Designer. Let's take a moment to review the structure of the Designer tool. Located on the left is the Data Source panel, which provides access to objects in the data source. In this example, we can see that this SQL Server data source has folders for procedures, tables, and views. Expanding the Tables folder, we see the underlying database tables in the data source. Next, the main panel is used to add content to the SQL query. For example, dragging the customer's table to the main panel adds that table to the SQL query. As you can see, the SQL panel below now has the beginnings of a new query. The Query Diagram panel lists query elements in a tree. As items are added or removed from the SQL query, the diagram adjusts automatically. The SQL panel has two tabs across the top. The first tab displays the text of the SQL query, and the second tab displays a preview of the data that the query will return from the database. By default, the Data tab will retrieve 10 rows of preview data. The Query Columns pane is used to perform operations on a single query column. You may toggle the visibility of the Query Columns pane by clicking the corresponding item in the ribbon control. Here, you may change the label of a column, add sorting, perform aggregate functions, group and filter data. We will cover these elements in greater detail later in the video. Let's create a new SQL query and add it to our workbook. I will start with an empty query canvas. Next, I will drag the customer's table to the query canvas. If the database you are working with has foreign key relationships defined between its tables, the designer will help you automatically join tables in your query. To do this, click on the title bar of a table on the canvas to display the link button. Next, click the link button to see what tables, if any, can be automatically added to the query. In this case, I will click the Orders table to add it to the query. Note that the join syntax is automatically added to the query and the table appears on the canvas. Repeat this process for all of the tables that you will be working with. Next, check the columns that you would like to add to your query. Note that the SQL code is generated automatically as you add or remove items to the query. To preview the data at any time, click the Data tab on the SQL pane. AccuQuery will return 10 rows from the database. If you wish to see all of the data, click the Execute button in the ribbon control. Next, let's add a calculated field to the query. For this example, we want to see the total value of order detail items, but there doesn't appear to be a corresponding total column. We do have the quantity ordered and the price, so we can easily calculate the total. To do this, first make sure the Query Columns pane is visible. Scroll to the bottom of the pane and click in the Expression column. Click the ellipsis button that appears to invoke the expression editor. For our example, we want to add a simple calculation using data from the Order Details table. click the table in the Query Objects pane and then drag the quantity column over to the expression pane. Next, type an asterisk to perform the multiplication and then drag the unit price to the expression. Click OK to add the expression to the query columns collection. Click the Visible checkbox to add the expression to the query. By default, the expression editor will name the new column Column 1. Replace the generic label with a more meaningful name. Click the Data tab to preview the data. When you are satisfied with the content of the SQL query, save it to your workbook so that you can create reports, pivot tables, charts, and dashboards with this data. Give the query a name and optional description. And that's it. The new query has been saved to your workbook. You can immediately view the data. I should point out that each time AccuQuery Studio loads an object, it will refresh the underlying data by executing the query so that your report objects are always working with the latest data from the database. You can change your queries at any time with the designer. To do this, choose the Edit SQL menu item and make any necessary adjustments. We hope that you found this brief introduction to the Visual Query Designer useful. Thanks for watching, and have fun discovering what's in your data.